My stepfather handed me a notarized invoice for raising me and told me I had 30 days to pay him back for my childhood. My mother sat beside him at the dining table, folding napkins into perfect squares, and said it was only fair because I had benefited from the household. What neither of them knew was that the invoice used the same account numbers, dates, and reimbursement codes my late father's union lawyer had been tracing for 4 years. My name is Elise Marlowe. I'm 17 years old. If stories about quiet people finally being believed have ever kept you company at night, stay with me. This one begins with a blue lunchbox, a white binder, and a sentence I did not answer. The sentence was, "You have always been expensive." My stepfather, Grant Voss, said it at 6:16 p.m. on Tuesday, March 25th, 2026, in our dining room in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. He was wearing the gray quarter zip he wore for work calls, even though his workday had ended 2 hours earlier. My mother, Donna, sat to his left with a legal pad in front of her. She had written my name at the top in blue ink and underlined it twice. The dining table had been cleared except for three things: a white binder with a clear plastic cover, a black pen with the name Voss Residential Management printed on the side, and my old blue lunchbox, the one my father had bought me when I was 6. It had a cracked handle and a faded sticker of a moon on the front. I still used it because the latch worked and because my father had written my initials inside the lid with permanent marker. Elise Mai Marlowe. Grant had placed the lunchbox in the center of the table like evidence. He opened the white binder and turned it toward me. The first page read Household Reimbursement Agreement. It had my full name on it, my date of birth, and a total due of $47,840. He had highlighted the number in yellow. My mother did not look at the number. She looked at the napkin in her hands. Grant said, "This is not punishment. This is accountability." That was one of his favorite words. Accountability. He used it for late library books, missing socks, and the time I forgot to replace the kitchen trash bag before school. He said it gently. He always sounded like a school principal giving a reasonable consequence to a student who had disappointed everyone. I stood in the doorway with my backpack, still on one shoulder, and my blue lunchbox in my right hand. I had gotten home from my shift at High V 21 minutes earlier. My shirt smelled like sliced turkey and receipt paper. I had $9.60 in cash in my jeans pocket from a coworker who paid me back for gas station coffee. Grant tapped the binder. "Sit down, Elise." I sat. The chair leg rocked slightly because the floorboard under it had been uneven since 2021. My father had noticed it once and said he would fix it the following Saturday. He died the Thursday before that Saturday came. Grant slid the black pen toward me. "I'm not asking you to pay everything at once," he said. "That would be unrealistic. We're proposing a structured repayment plan, $498 a month for 96 months. I did the math in my head because I always did the math in my head. $498 times 96 months was $47,808. The binder said $47,840. There was a $32 difference. That detail matters later. My mother finally spoke. "It's just paperwork, honey." She said honey, the way people put a rug over a stain. I looked at the binder. I looked at the pen. I looked at my lunchbox. I did not sign. Grant leaned back slightly, not angry, not loud. That would have been easier. He folded his hands on the table and gave me the look he used on tenants who were late with rent at his property management company. He said, "Your father left obligations. Your mother and I absorbed them. You're old enough now to understand that love does not erase cost." My father's name was Marcus Marlowe. He had been a lineman for Mid River Electric Union, Local 219. He left behind a life insurance policy, a union death benefit, a small college trust, and a pension survivor payment that was supposed to come to me until I turned 18. Grant called those things obligations. My mother wrote something on the legal pad. The pen moved slowly. I watched her write without asking what it said. If you have ever been in a room where the person who is supposed to protect you becomes a witness for the person hurting you, there is a kind of silence that is not empty. It has furniture in it. It has a table. It has a pen. It has your name printed on a page you did not request. Grant turned to page 2. There were categories: food allocation, vehicle use, utilities share, bedroom occupancy, emotional disruption surcharge. That last one was $4,200. He had typed an explanation beneath it: repeated grief related defiance, requiring parental intervention, counseling coordination, and household adjustment. My father had been dead for 6 years. Grant had billed me for grieving him. I looked at my mother then. She saw me looking and folded another napkin. Grant said, "You can take the binder to your room tonight. Sign by Friday. If you refuse, we'll have to discuss your car access, your phone, and your college applications." I said one sentence. "I need to read it first." Grant smiled a little. Not enough for anyone else to call it a smile. That's mature. He used mature the way some people use a leash. I picked up the binder. I picked up my lunchbox. I walked upstairs. I did not run. I did not ask my mother to follow me. I did not ask why the woman who kept my kindergarten handprint in the kitchen drawer was letting her husband invoice me for childhood. At the top of the stairs, I heard Grant say she handled that better than I expected. My mother answered, "She's practical." I went into my room and closed the door with my hand still on the knob until the latch settled into place. I put the white binder on my desk. I put the blue lunchbox beside it. Then I reached under my mattress and pulled out a grocery receipt from February 3rd, 2024. It was from Fairway. The total was $73.12. On the back, in my father's union lawyer's handwriting, were 4 words: keep paper. Paper remembers. His name was Raymond Bell. He was not my lawyer then. He had been my father's friend, the kind who showed up after the funeral with grocery bags and did not ask where the plates were because he remembered from cookouts. Raymond had given me that receipt 2 years earlier outside the public library on 5th Avenue Southeast. I was 15. It was snowing lightly. He had handed it to me through the open passenger window of his old Honda and said, "The line I will remember for the rest of my life. Don't make a speech when a copy will do." Then he drove away before I could ask him what he meant. I did not know that he had already filed 2 preservation letters by then. I did not know that he had requested archived pension distribution records from Mid-River Electric Union. I did not know that my father's sister, Aunt Lenora, had been sending him bank statements from a safe deposit box in Waterloo. I knew only that paper remembers. So I opened the white binder and began photographing every page. The first photograph was taken at 6:42 p.m., the second at 6:43 p.m. The binder had 28 pages. I photographed all 28. Then I uploaded them to a folder in my school Google Drive named Biology Diagrams Fall. There were no biology diagrams in that folder. There were receipts, screenshots, letters, bank records, photographs of envelopes, and one scanned copy of a birthday card my father wrote me when I was 7. By the time Grant gave me the invoice, the folder had 312 files. The white binder made it 340. Stay with me. This is where it changes. The first time Grant used the phrase benefited from the household, I was 12. It was October 9th, 2021, 3 months after he married my mother and moved into our house on Birch Lane. The house had been my father's house first. He bought it in 2016 with a down payment from overtime stormwork and a mortgage through Collins Community Credit Union. My room was at the back of the house. It had yellow curtains my father hated but never replaced because I loved them. The closet door stuck in July. The heat vent rattled in January. Under the window was a dent in the wood floor from when my father dropped the toolbox and said a word I was not allowed to repeat. Grant called the house the Marlowe asset the first month he lived there. He said it while standing in the kitchen with a tablet listing maintenance items. My mother laughed softly and told him he sounded like a banker. He said, a house is either managed or it decays. 2 weeks later, he put a keypad lock on the basement office, the room where my father's fishing rods, union jackets, and tax folders were stored. I asked my mother why. She said Grant needed a clean workspace. I said Dad's things were in there. She said, we can live in a museum. I did not answer. In November of that year, my father's red lunch cooler disappeared from the garage shelf. It was not expensive. It had a broken zipper and a burn mark from a transformer job near Dubuque. I found it in the trash bin on collection morning with 2 cracked thermoses and a pair of leather gloves. I took the gloves out and hid them in my closet. I left the cooler because the truck was already coming down the street. That was the first thing I learned about Grant. He did not destroy everything at once. He removed one object at a time and waited to see who would object. If no one did, he removed the next one. The second incident was the braces appointment, March 14th, 2023. I remember the date because it was pie day and my geometry teacher brought grocery store pie cut into uneven slices. I had an orthodontist consultation at 3:30 p.m. at Prairie. View Dental Arts, my bottom teeth were crowding. My father had started saving for braces before he died. There was a college and care trust at North Star Bank. That was what my mother called it, college and care. Grant picked me up from school in his white company SUV. He did not drive toward Prairie View. He drove home. I said, the appointment is today. He said, we canceled it. I said, why? He said, your mother and I reviewed priorities. Cosmetic corrections can wait. My teeth were not cosmetic when my father made the appointment. At home, my mother was standing at the stove stirring soup. She did not turn around when I came in. Grant said a printed email on the counter. Appointment cancellation, confirmation, Prairie View Dental Arts. Cancelled at 9:12 a.m. on the reason he had typed family budgeting. 3 weeks later, Grant bought a standing desk for the basement office. The receipt from Office Max was on the kitchen counter for one afternoon, $789. I photographed it beside the cancellation email. I did not ask again about braces. The third incident was the envelope from Mid River. Every January, a tax form arrived with my name and my mother's name on it. Mid River Electric Union Benefit Administration. My mother used to open it at the kitchen table and say, this is from your dad after Grant moved in. He opened them in the basement office. On January 17th, 2024, I came home early because the school boiler had failed and classes ended at noon. Grant was on a video call in the dining room. The basement office door was open. I saw the envelope on his desk. Inside was a statement titled Minor Survivor Pension Distribution Summary. It listed monthly deposits of $1,180. Payee of record, Dana Amalo Voss. Beneficiary, Elise Mai Marlowe. The statement covered January through December 2023. Total annual distribution, $14,160. I photographed the first page with my phone. My hands were steady enough that the text was clear. That night at dinner, Grant said we needed to tighten household spending because inflation was affecting everyone. We ate rice, canned green beans, and chicken thighs. The next morning, a package arrived from West Elm. My mother said it was for the basement office because Grant had back pain. The chair cost $1,199, one pension month and $19. I photographed the shipping label. If you have ever learned not to ask where the money went, because asking became proof you were ungrateful, put the word paper in the comments. Not because comments fix anything, because sometimes a record starts with someone else saying, I saw that too. The fourth incident was the blue lunchbox. It happened on August 28th, 2025, the first week of senior year. I came downstairs at 7:12 a.m. and found Grant at the kitchen island with my lunchbox open in front of him. He had removed everything from inside: turkey sandwich, apple, 2 store brand granola bars, my work schedule from Hy-Vee, a folded note from my friend Priya about calculus homework. He held up the schedule. You're working 26 hours this week. I said yes. He said that interferes with household contribution. I said I was saving for application fees. He said applications are not urgent until we decide what is realistic. That was another word he liked. He opened a drawer and took out a printed form. Student earnings household offset agreement. He had typed my name again. The form said that while I resided in the home, 35% of my after-tax wages would be deposited into the household operating account to offset increased food, laundry, transportation, and electricity costs. I stared at the paper, not at him, at the paper. Adid, he said, this is how adults participate. My mother was sitting at the small table near the window, scrolling on her phone. She did not look up. Grant said, your mother agrees. My mother said, it's good practice. I put my sandwich back in the lunchbox. Then the apple. Then the granola bars. Then Priya's note. Then I closed the lid. Grant pushed the form toward me. I said, I'll be late. He said, we'll finish tonight. That afternoon, during my break at work, I opened a savings account at Green State Credit Union with Aunt Lenora as the adult custodian. I deposited my first paycheck there, $413.27. I kept the receipt in the blue lunchbox for 6 months. Grant asked twice where my wages were going. I said direct deposit. That was true. He did not ask where. By March 2026, he had lost patience with indirect control, so he made the white binder. The white binder was not an outburst. It was a project. It had tabs, housing, food, utilities, transportation, behavioral costs, administrative fee. Administrative fee was $2,400 for managing the debt he said I owed him. The next morning, Wednesday, March 26, I took the binder to school in my backpack. It was heavier than my chemistry textbook. At 11:20 a.m., I went to the library during study hall and sat at the back table near the windows where the Wi-Fi was weak. But the librarian did not interrupt people who looked busy. I texted Raymond Bell. I wrote, he gave me a reimbursement agreement, $47,840. Once signature by Friday. I uploaded photos. Raymond replied at 11:23 a.m. Do not sign. Bring lunchbox after school. That was all. Not, are you okay? Not, I'm sorry. Not dramatic punctuation. Do not sign. Bring lunchbox after school. The lunchbox mattered because Raymond had told me 2 years earlier to keep original paper somewhere. Grant would not search carefully. Grant checked backpacks. He checked desk drawers. He checked browser history. He did not check the cracked lunchbox with the moon sticker because he thought sentimental objects were clutter, not storage. At 3:48 p.m., I walked to Raymond's office on 2nd Avenue. Bell and Kessler Labor Council was on the second floor above a closed travel agency. The stairwell smelled like floor cleaner and old paper. Raymond's name was painted on the glass door in gold letters that had begun to peel around the B. He was 63, maybe 64. He wore suspenders and kept peppermints in a ceramic bowl shaped like a trout. He had represented mid-river workers for 31 years. My father once said Raymond could make a claims adjuster, apologized to a chair. Raymond did not hug me when I came in. He pointed to the chair across from his desk. I sat. I placed a blue lunchbox on his desk. He opened it carefully, the way someone opens a box of old photographs. Inside were copies of the pension statement, the Prairie View cancellation email, the West Elm receipt, the Office Max receipt, the Student Earnings Household Offset Agreement, and the ferry receipt with his handwriting on the back. He looked through them without speaking. Then he opened his bottom drawer and took out a red accordion folder. Elise, he said, I need you to listen without helping me make it easier. I nodded. He placed the red folder on the desk. This is not about one bad invoice. He opened the first section. This is 4 years of diversion. The word diversion was quiet. It was worse than theft because it sounded clean. Page 1 was a trust ledger from North Star Bank. The account name was Marcus Marlowe Education and Care Trust for Elise May Marlowe. Initial deposit, $92,000. Date funded, July 9th, 2020. Source, Mid-River Electric Union Death Benefit and Private Life Insurance Allocation. Page 2 showed a balance on August 1st, 2021, $88,410. That was 1 month after Grant married my mother. Page 3 showed a transfer on September 2nd, 2021, $12,600 to Voss Residential Management operating account. Memo line. Property stabilization. Raymond did not explain. He let the memo line sit there. Page 4 showed another transfer on February 18th, 2022, $9,875 to Hawthorne Interiors. Memo line. Home office renovation. That was the basement office. My father's fishing rods had been moved to the garage to make room for Grant's built-in shelves. Page 5 showed a transfer on November 4th, 2022, $6,450 to Riverbend Auto Group. Memo line. Vehicle safety. That was the down payment on Grant's white company, CV. The company vehicle paid partly from my trust. I looked at the pages. I did not cry. I did not ask Raymond to stop. I had learned by then that facts do not become kinder if you meet them slowly. Raymond turned to the next section. This is the pension. Monthly survivor pension deposits of $1,180 began August 2020 and continued through February 2026. 67 months. $1,180 times 67 months equaled $79,060. Raymond had written the arithmetic on a yellow legal sheet. Total received $79,060. Documented direct benefit to Elise, $7,980. Unexplained or diverted, $71,080. The direct benefit list included school fees, 2 winter coats, prescription glasses, and 1 used laptop from 2022. It did not include food. It did not include housing. Raymond had highlighted a note from the plan administrator: survivor pension intended for the beneficiary's maintenance, education, medical care, and welfare. General household enrichment is not a beneficiary expense. General household enrichment. That phrase would come back later. Raymond turned another page. This is the house. I looked down. There was a mortgage statement from Collins Community Credit Union. The house on Birch Lane had not been solely my mother's. My father's will gave my mother a life estate, meaning she could live in it, but my father's half interest passed to me and was to be held until I turned 18. I owned half of the house Grant called the Marlowe asset. Raymond said, "Your father was more careful than Grant thinks." The next page was a property tax document, then a copy of the will, then an email from Grant to a loan officer at Cedar Valley, lending dated January 11th, 2026. Subject line: cash out refinance inquiry. The email said, "My wife and I are looking to restructure equity in our primary residence before our daughter leaves for college. Title is slightly complicated due to legacy estate language, but we expect to resolve that internally." Resolve that internally. I read it 3 times. Raymond said, "That is why he wants your signature." He turned back to the household reimbursement agreement. On page 23, buried under repayment terms, was a paragraph titled Offset and Release. If I signed, I acknowledged the personal debt to Grant and my mother. I also agreed that any future distributions, inherited interests, trust balances, or estate-related claims could be offset against that household debt. In plain language, if I signed, Grant could claim my half of the house, the trust balance, and any recovered pension money by saying I owed him first. The invoice was not about me paying him back. It was a net. Raymond leaned back in his chair. He said, "He billed you for standing where your father left you." That was the highlight beat. I did not know it at the time. I only knew I had stopped hearing the traffic outside. At 4:26 p.m., Raymond made 3 copies of the white binder. One went into his locked file cabinet. One went into a sealed envelope for Aunt Lenora. One went back into my backpack because Grant expected to see it at home. Then Raymond took out a new document. It was titled Notice of Preservation and Non-Consent. He had already drafted it. My name was on the first line. The document said I did not consent to any debt agreement, wage assignment, trust offset, property release, refinance authorization, educational account transfer, or household reimbursement claim. It said any attempt to obtain my signature while I was a minor, and under threat of housing, transportation, communication, school access, or family contact restrictions would be treated as coercive. Raymond handed me a pen. "This one you can sign." I signed. My signature looked smaller than usual. Raymond notarized it. His assistant, Miss Clara, stamped the page and wrote the date. March 26th, 2026. The stamp mark was dark blue. Raymond made me put the original in the blue lunchbox. "Take it home," he said. "Do not show it unless I tell you." I asked, "What happens Friday?" He closed the red folder. Friday, he learns paper has 2 sides. On Thursday night, Grant reminded me I had 1 day left. He did it at dinner. We were eating Bag City from a glass dish my mother had owned since before I was born. Grant served himself first, then my mother, then me. He said, "Tomorrow after school, we'll finalize the agreement." I said, "Okay." My mother looked relieved. Grant said, "I'm proud of you for approaching this like an adult." I said nothing. The word adult had become like the white binder, something he opened when he wanted my name under his hand. After dinner, I washed my plate. My mother stood beside me, drying forks. She said softly, "It really will be easier if you sign." I looked at the water running over the plate. I asked, "Easier for who?" She did not answer. That was the only question I asked her that week. At 10:18 p.m., alone in my car in the Hy-Vee parking lot after my shift, I cried once, not loudly, not with my face in my hands. Tears came while I was holding the steering wheel and looking at the blue lunchbox on the passenger seat. The moon sticker had peeled at one edge. I pressed it down with my thumb. Then I drove home. That was the only time. Friday, March 28th, 2026, was cold enough that the windows in the school cafeteria fogged at the edges. I had calculus first period, government second, English third. At lunch, Priya asked why I kept checking my phone. I said, "Family paperwork." She said, "That sounds fake and terrible." I said, "It is both." At 3:13 p.m., Raymond texted, "Home by 5 p.m. Do not enter discussion before 5:30 p.m. Keep phone recording in pocket. If Iowa law permits one-party consent, it does. Say little." I read the text twice. Then I deleted the preview from my lock screen. If you are listening and thinking, why didn't she just refuse? Why didn't she yell? Why didn't she leave earlier? I need you to understand something. In houses like that, refusal is not one moment. It is logistics. It is where you sleep, who pays for your phone, who signs field trip forms, who has your birth certificate, who knows how to sound calm when they describe you as unstable. I got home at 4:52 p.m. Grant's SUV was in the driveway. My mother's car was in the garage. A third car was parked across the street, a navy Toyota Camry. I did not recognize. I walked inside. The dining table was arranged the same way as Tuesday. White binder, black pen, legal pad. This time, there was also a small stack of envelopes. North Star Bank, Collins Community Credit Union, University of Iowa admissions, Green State Credit Union. Grant had been in my room, my backpack strap tightened in my hand. My mother sat at the table. Her face looked powdered, not with makeup, but with effort. Grant stood by the window. He said, "We need to talk about honesty." The Navy Camry across the street mattered. I did not know why. Yet, Grant lifted one envelope. "You opened a custodial account without discussing it." I did not answer. He lifted another. "You requested transcripts be sent to colleges. We did not approve." I did not answer. He tapped the University of Iowa envelope. "And you listed your aunt as an emergency contact." My mother said, "That hurt me, Elise." That was the first sentence she had aimed directly at me all week. I looked at her. She looked away. Grant sat down. It's clear we've allowed too much independence without enough structure. So the agreement is no longer optional. He turned the binder to the signature page. 5:30 p.m. The minute changed on the microwave clock behind him. My phone was in my hoodie pocket, recording audio. My hand was resting on the blue lunchbox in my lap. Grant said, "Sign." I said, "Number." The word was not dramatic. It was not loud. It was one syllable placed on the table. Grant's expression did not change immediately. My mother inhaled and held it. Grant said, "Then we move to consequences." He opened the legal pad. "Effective tonight, your car keys will be held by me. Your phone will be placed in the kitchen after 8 p.m. Your work hours will be reduced or ended. College applications will pause until we have a family financial plan. Your room may be reassigned for home office use. Because you will not need privacy to defy household expectations. I listened. Then I said the sentence Raymond told me to say. I do not consent to any debt agreement or release of inherited property. Grant blinked once. My mother looked at him. He said, Where did you hear that phrase? I did not answer. He reached for the binder. The doorbell rang at 5:34 p.m. No one moved for 2 seconds. Grant stood first. He looked annoyed, not worried. He expected a delivery, maybe a tenant, maybe the neighbor's kid selling raffle tickets. He opened the front door. Raymond Bell stood on the porch in a brown overcoat, holding a red accordion folder. Aunt Lenora stood beside him. Behind them was a woman in a navy suit with a leather portfolio. She introduced herself later as Catherine Ivers, fraud investigator for Mid-River Electric Union Benefit Administration. The Navy Camry was hers. Raymond did not step inside until Grant opened the door. Wider, he said. Good evening, Grant. I represent Elise Marlowe regarding trust, pension, wage, and estate matters. This is a notice visit, not a negotiation. Grant said, She's a minor. Raymond said, That is the problem. My mother stood up so quickly, her chair moved backward across the floor. Aunt Lenora looked past everyone and found me at the dining table. She did not rush to me. She did not make a scene. She just looked at me and said, There you are. That was all. There you are. Not poor thing. Not what did they do. There you are. I remember it because for 6 years, adults had talked around me like I was a disputed expense. My aunt spoke as if I was a person located in a room. Raymond placed the red folder on the dining table beside the white binder. He did not sit. Catherine Ivers remained standing near the entryway. She had a badge clipped to her portfolio, not police, not federal, but official enough that Grant kept looking at it. Raymond said, We are going to proceed in number statements. You will not interrupt Elise. Elise will not be asked to justify refusing an unlawful agreement. Dana, you may listen. Grant, if you speak over me, I will end the visit and file emergency motions Monday morning. Grant gave a small laugh. This is absurd. Raymond opened the red folder. Statement 1. Elise does not owe you $47,840. He placed the household reimbursement agreement on the table. Statement 2. The repayment plan you proposed is internally inconsistent. $498 per M-ons for 96 months equals $47,808, not $47,840. You either cannot multiply or the number was invented after the payment amount. Grant's jaw shifted. My mother looked at the yellow highlighted total. Raymond continued. Statement 3. Page 23 of your agreement attempts to create an offset against inherited property, trust assets, pension distributions, and estate claims. Elise is a minor. You are her stepfather. You have no authority to convert household expenses into a lien against her father's estate. Grant said, This is a private family matter. Catherine Ivers spoke for the first time. Mid-River survivor distributions are not private when the plan receives a diversion complaint. Her voice was level. She sounded like she had said similar sentences in rooms with worse carpet. Grant turned toward my mother. Dana. My mother did not answer. Raymond took out the trust ledger. Statement 4. The Marcus Marlowe Education and Care Trust was funded with $92,000 on July 9, 2020. As of February 28, 2026, the remaining balance was $26,390. He placed another page down. Documented trust depletion is $65,610. He placed 3 highlighted transfers. Beside it, $12,600 to Voss Residential Management on September 2nd, 2021, $9,875 to Hawthorne Interiors on February 18th, 2022, $6,450 to Riverbend Auto Group on November 4th, 2022. He looked at Grant. Those 3 transfers total $28,925. None of them are educational. None of them are medical. None of them are Elise's care. Grant said the home office supported the household. Raymond said general household enrichment is not beneficiary care. There it was again. The phrase from the plan administrator, general household enrichment. It sounded sterile. It also sounded final. Raymond turned another page. Statement 5. Survivor pension deposits of $1,180 per month were issued for Elise from August 2020 through February 2026. 67 deposits. Total received $79,060. Catherine Ivers opened her portfolio and removed her own copy. Raymond continued. Documented direct benefit to Elise is $7,980. The unexplained or diverted amount is $71,080. My mother whispered, "That can't be right." Raymond looked at her, then, not harshly. "Dana, I sent you a letter about this on June 3rd, 2024. It was signed for at this address by Grant Voss at 2:14 p.m. He placed the certified mail receipt on the table. My mother stared at the signature. Grant had signed her name, not his, hers, Dana Voss, in Grant's blocky handwriting. That was the moment my mother understood she had not merely failed to protect me. She had also been managed. I did not feel sorry for her then. That came much later and never arrived completely. Raymond turned to the house documents. Statement 6. Marcus Marlowe's will granted Dana a life estate. In the Birch Lane property, Elise owns a remainder interest in 50% of the property. Grant, your January 11th email to Cedar Valley. Lending described title as complicated due to legacy estate language and said you expected to resolve that internally. He placed the email on the table. Your proposed agreement was the internal resolution. Grant said nothing. Aunt Lenora was standing behind me now. She did not touch my shoulder. She knew better than to make my body part of the room's evidence. Raymond took out the final document. It was my signed notice of preservation and non-consent. The dark blue notary stamp sat at the bottom. Statement 7. Elise has already refused consent. She refused yesterday in writing. Any further attempt to obtain her signature will be documented as coercion. Grant looked at me, then, not like a stepdaughter, like a locked door he had expected to open. He said, "Elise, you don't understand what they're doing. They're turning you against your mother." I looked at the white binder, then at the blue lunchbox, then at my mother's legal pad, where she had written my name and underlined it twice. I said, "I understand the math." That was my whole confrontation. 4 words. I understand the math. Grant tried to speak again, but Raymond lifted one hand. "We're not finished." He turned to my mother. "Dana, Catherine's office will conduct a plan review. I will file in probate court Monday to freeze remaining trust assets and block any refinance or encumbrance of the Birch Lane property. Elise will spend tonight with Lenora. If you object, I will ask the court for temporary protective orders based on financial coercion, document seizure, and attempted conversion of minor assets." My mother finally looked at me. "Do you want to leave?" It was the wrong question. 6 years late. I picked up the blue lunchbox. Yes, Grant said, this is ridiculous. She has school. She has responsibilities. Aunt Lenora spoke without raising her voice. She has a coat upstairs. I'll help her get it. We went to my room. I packed one duffel bag, 3 pairs of jeans, 4 shirts, underwear, charger, chemistry notebook, the leather gloves I saved from the trash in 2021, the birthday card from my father, the blue lunchbox. Aunt Lenora stood by the doorway and looked at the yellow curtains. She said, your dad hated those. I said, I know. She said, he kept them anyway. I put the birthday card between 2 sweaters so it would not bend. Downstairs, Raymond was still at the dining table. Catherine Ivers was giving my mother a card. Grant stood near the window with his arms folded. The white binder was closed. Now, no one asked me to sign anything. At 6:18 p.m., I walked out of the house on Birch Lane with my duffel bag in one hand and the blue lunchbox in the other. I did not look back at the basement window. I did look once at the porch railing because my father had painted it green. After I told him white was boring, the paint was peeling. That detail does not matter legally. It matters to me. If you've ever left a house and realized you were not leaving home, only the place that had been using the word, write the word home somewhere, in a notebook, in a comment, on a receipt, anywhere paper can remember it. The next week was not cinematic. No one was arrested at breakfast. No one confessed in tears. Grant did not fall to his knees in the driveway. My mother did not drive through a rainstorm begging me to forgive her. Real consequences are mostly envelopes. On Monday, March 31st, Raymond filed a petition in Linn County Probate Court to freeze the trust and require an accounting. The case caption had my father's name in it, Estate of Marcus Ellery, Marlowe. Seeing his full name on court paper made me sit down in Raymond's waiting room. On Tuesday, April 1st, Collins Community Credit Union flagged the Birch Lane property against refinancing pending title clarification. On Wednesday, April 2nd, Mid-River Electric Union Benefit Administration suspended payments to my mother and opened a diversion review. Catherine Ivers requested bank records from North Star Bank, Green State Credit Union, and my mother's joint checking account. On Friday, April 4th, Grant's company placed him on administrative leave because Voss Residential Management had received trust money into its operating account. He sent an email to staff saying he was handling a personal estate misunderstanding. Raymond printed the email for me. Personal estate misunderstanding. He underlined misunderstanding. Once, by April 10th, the numbers were cleared. Trust depletion requiring restoration, $65,610. Pension diversion under review, $71,080. Total civil recovery target, $136,690. Raymond checked the arithmetic in front of me. 65,610 plus 71,080 equaled 136,690. He wrote it on a yellow legal pad and turned it toward me. Never let them make it foggy, he said. Grant's white binder had tried to make me owe $47,840. Raymond's red folder proved they owed me $136,690. Paper had 2 sides. My mother called me 7 times that first week. I did not answer. Aunt Lenora did not make me. She put the phone on the kitchen counter when it vibrated and said, you can decide when deciding costs less. That was how she listened. She did not fix. She did not explain my mother to me. She did not tell me anger was heavy or forgiveness was freedom. She made oatmeal. She drove me to school. She bought me socks without making a ceremony. of it. On April 12th, my mother left a voicemail. Elise, I didn't know all of it. I saved it because Raymond said to preserve communications. I did not play it twice. On April 17th, Grant sent an email to me, Raymond, my mother, and Aunt Lenora. Subject line, family restoration proposal. He proposed mediation, a gradual return home, and an agreement that all parties acknowledge misunderstandings occurred due to grief, blended family stress, and poor communication. He attached a revised household contribution chart. Raymond replied 9 minutes later, Elise does not participate in restoration proposals, while financial accountings are incomplete. That was the whole email. On April 22nd, my mother came to Aunt Lenora's house. She texted first. Aunt Lenora asked me if I wanted to see her. I said yes because I wanted to know what her face looked like after the paperwork. We sat on the back porch. My mother wore the blue sweater she wore to parent-teacher conferences. She had a folder in her lap. Not white, manila. She said, Grant moved out yesterday. I nodded. She said, I filed for separation. I nodded again. She said, I should have asked more questions. I looked at her hands. No napkins. No legal pad. Just her wedding ring turned inward. She said, can we start over? There it was. The cheap reunion sentence. Not because she meant it cheaply. Because people who break years into pieces sometimes think starting over is a door. I said, number. She closed her eyes. I said, we can start from here, not over. She nodded once. She did not argue. That was the first useful thing she had done in a long time. She slid the manila folder toward me. Inside were 3 things. My birth certificate, my social security card, and a photograph of my father holding the blue lunchbox on my first day of first grade. He was crouched beside me on the porch. I had 2 missing front teeth. The moon sticker was new, then bright silver, not faded. On the back, in my mother's handwriting, it said, Elise insisted on carrying lunch, even though school ends before noon. I kept the photograph. I gave the folder back. She said, I'm sorry. I said, I know. Those 2 words were not forgiveness. They were receipt. By May 2026, the anticlimax had settled into a routine. I lived with Aunt Lenora in Waterloo during the week and finished senior year by driving 41 minutes each way. In her old Subaru, I worked fewer hours at Hy-Vee. I submitted my college applications without asking Grant what was realistic. I got into the University of Iowa on May 19th. Financial aid arrived on May 27th. The trust freeze meant the remaining $26,390 could not be touched without court approval. On June 6th, the probate court ordered a full accounting. On July 9th, exactly 6 years after the trust was funded, Grant signed a civil settlement admitting no wrongdoing but agreeing to restore $42,000 within 90 days and assigning future garnishment rights for the remaining amount pending pension review. Raymond said admitting no wrongdoing was common. He said money returning spends the same whether pride comes with it or not. The Mid-River Pension Review concluded in August. The plan determined that $58,920 of the $71,080 diversion figure was recoverable under plan rules. The rest required separate civil claims because some records were too mixed with household accounts to classify cleanly. $58,920 plus the trust settlement target of $65,610 equaled $124,530. That was the enforceable number, not the whole wound, the enforceable number. There is a difference. Grant never apologized to me directly. He sent one letter through Raymond in September. It used the phrases regret the conflict, complex household pressures, and youthful misinterpretation. Raymond asked if I wanted to read the whole thing. I said no. He put it in the file. My mother and I met every other Sunday at a coffee shop halfway between Cedar Rapids and Waterloo. At first, we talked about school, then weather, then my father. Carefully, as if his name were a glass we were learning to set down without breaking. She did not ask me to come home. That is why I kept meeting her. Grant sold the SUV in October. The basement office was dismantled. My father's fishing rods were found behind a stack of storage bins. The red lunch cooler was gone, of course. Some things do not come back because the truck already came down the street years ago. I graduated in May 2027. Aunt Lenora sat in the second row. My mother sat 4 seats away from her. Raymond sat at the end of the row in a suit that looked older than me. When my name was called, all 3 stood. No one from Grant's family came. I was not sad about that. After graduation, we went back to Aunt Dolores' house. She had made chicken salad and bought grocery store cupcakes with too much frosting. Raymond handed me a flat package wrapped in brown paper. Inside was the white binder, not the original, a copy. Across the front, Raymond had written in black marker, paid nothing, proved everything. I laughed once, not because it was funny. Exactly. Because the sentence knew where to stand. That night, alone in the small bedroom at Aunt Lenora's, I took out the blue lunchbox. The latch finally failed. In my hand, it did not break dramatically. It simply gave up after 11 years of being asked to hold. Inside were the objects I had carried from one life to the next. The farewell receipt with Raymond's handwriting, the notice of preservation and non-consent, the photograph of my father on the porch, the leather gloves, a copy of the final accounting, and the moon sticker, which had peeled off completely sometime during the move to college. I had saved it between 2 index cards. For years, I thought the lunchbox mattered because my father bought it. Then I thought it mattered because it hid evidence. Then I thought it mattered because Raymond trusted it more than a locked drawer. I understand it differently now. A lunchbox is not a vault. It is not a legal strategy. It is not a monument. It is a small, ordinary thing meant to carry what will keep you alive until you get home. My stepfather put it on the dining table as proof that I had benefited from the household. He was right about one thing. I had benefited not from his household, from my father's carefulness, from Raymond's paper, from Aunt Lenora's, there you are, from every receipt I kept instead of every speech I wanted to make, from the blue lunchbox that carried my lunch when I was 6, my evidence when I was 15, and my proof when I was 17. Grant tried to bill me for my childhood. He forgot my childhood had already kept the receipts. The last time I saw the house on Birch Lane, the yellow curtains were still in my old bedroom window. My mother had not taken them down. She said she might repaint the room one day, maybe make it a sewing room, maybe leave it alone. I told her she could do what she wanted. I did not live there anymore. Before I left for college, I wrote one sentence on the inside lid of the blue lunchbox where my father had written my initials, not in permanent marker, in pencil. Paper remembers, but I do too. Then I packed it in the bottom drawer of my dorm desk, not because I needed to hide anything anymore, but because some objects deserve to retire where no one is searching them.